We're good?
I would love a little clarification around the relationship of the yantra to the mantra. And in one tradition I've read, and they teach that the yantra is the body of the deity and the mantra is the mind of the deity. And that seems like a strange distinction in light of what you just taught.
Yeah. It's probably somebody trying to teach something nice, but it doesn't quite go with our lineage teachings, yeah? We can even look at the Shiva Sutras themselves, the way they were revealed. They were first revealed as pure impulse. And Vasugupta, the receiver, or the seer, it's called in India, the seer, the receiver of these sutras, he was having this revelation from Shiva consciousness, Shakti consciousness, and it came as an impulse. And he said, huh? I don't get it. That's like too source what? You know? So then Essence said, you know, I'm playing this out like a drama, but it happened very quickly. But then Essence was accommodating his lack of capacity, and transmission was made in the form of what? Not yet. Symbols, right? So the first Essence explosion was pure energy of a bindu, and he couldn't pick it up. That we would say is not a, you know, source. Pre-verbal, pure Essence experience, just Icha Shakti. Couldn't pick that up. So then it came down into symbol, yantra. So now yantras were pouring at him. And this was supposed to explain the knowledge of self-realization. He was like, what? Please. I don't understand this, and how could I tell other people about this? Because the sutras themselves say one very important thing, that when a yogin attains this for themselves, they live for nothing else but to share it with other people. How could I share it with other people? Because he was a compassionate man, very pure in his heart, and that's why he received this transmission. So, again, grace and compassion and mercy said, okay, Mahashakti, Parvati, Shiva's wife, said, okay, we'll give you another download. Can try this mantra, just bija mantras. Well, that's not enough. Then again, the same thing happened again. The next wave came as sutra, right? But what's unique about these, and I think belies or reveals their source, the way they were revealed, is they're not sentences. These are not sentences constructed by someone's mind. These are revealed pieces of energy, vidya shakti, in the form of wisdom energy. And, you know, chaitanyam atma, jnanam anam, these aren't sentences, you know, these aren't sentences. The structure is very pithy. So it was revealed just chunks of knowledge hitting them as energy. And he stayed faithful to it, and he tried to remember them. But then they said, well, if you forget, just go to this rock in the river, touch it, it'll turn over. Huge rock, a huge boulder, almost half the size of this room. It'll turn over, and they're all engraved in there in case you forget anyway. So that's the mythology story around these sutras. So what's the relationship then? We can see from that story that there's a telescoping effect into this world from subtle to gross. The pure impulse of Shiva can't be stopped. The impulse of our enlightened nature, this whole universe is nothing but enlightened energy. Bristling, enlightened energy. But what do we see? Dull colors, emotions that are heavy. You know, this is why I love art so much as a spiritual path, because if you're constantly trying to paint in a way that shows the light opening up, that shows that power, that's why when I go into temples and I see the Newari deities with all the flames, and I love the acrylic, actually, I gotta say, because it just punches, you know. This beautiful luminosity and effulgence, it makes you remember, right. In Tantra, we say when you realize underneath all this concrete and mortar and trees and sky that looks kind of nice and naturey and beautiful sometimes, is pure luminosity. You know, pure energy of light consciousness. So, like rainbow colors and shapes and forms and so on. So if we look at how it was transmitted, we realize that going from subtle to gross, we're landed here in the gross, and what we want to do is climb our way back through the chain of it, through the subtlety. And that's what chapter 2 says. Progressively, with effort, put your mind into these source aspects and bring yourself back. That's mantra. Now what is then the relationship between mantra and the yantra? Now here I'm not talking about long mantras that are sutra mantras. I'm talking about bijas now, because bijas are what it's all about in Tantra. Well, as this person taught you, the one is the body and the other one is the mind of the deity and so on, it's not true. In our traditional way of understanding it, they are all, each one, complete as the body, speech, and mind of the deity. Right? The dhyana shloka even. What is dhyana shloka? Dhyana shloka is the shloka that was composed so we could visualize the deity, right? Right? Ya kundendu tushadahara dhavala. So we talk about Saraswati, and she's got these wonderful hands that are done with henna. And so you're seeing her in this shloka. Even that, which has no bija mantra or seed power, is a furthest extension into the gross world, so we can visualize her. It's still on the same thread. That's why it can spiritualize, but not as rapidly as a bija. Bija lies behind that. The bija mantra, Ain for Saraswati, is her energy body itself in verbal form. What lies behind the Ain is the experience of the wisdom light body of Saraswati. So that's the complete wisdom light body. That's her mind, that's her energy, that's her body. Behind that is a yantra, a symbol, not even at that form, not even having the flowing out of the vibration. And that is all contained as well, the mind, the energy, and so forth. But don't think a yantra is what you draw on paper or what you paint, nor should you think a mantra is what you repeat. This is the difference. Okay? This is like a master class in this, but this is really important. Good question. Because this really should be out there. What you draw is something to trigger your mind into what yantra really is, which brings you into that essence energy really deeply. Now, when you first start to practice, many of us, if we're not artists or painters, I remember looking at the yantras thinking they were very interesting, but what? I was supposed to relate to that as a living being's energy and essence, and it was supposed to transmit to me? What? So my guru said, well, take birch paper or copper and get a compass and a ruler and a pen and draw out this yantra. And you can use blood. That was done in the old days. But if you're not that, a little squeamish, you can use saffron and water and make this yantra. Then put it on your wall. Put a candle here, crystal here, blah, 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 and do this thing. And I was like, okay. So I started working with it. But little by little, as I worked with it, and I let my mind relax back into source through this process again, using the mantra sound of the bija and the yantra, and the surfing and riding energy back to source happened. I started to realize the yantra as some manifestation of this energy level that we can actually draw to reflect something much more profound on an inner level. Okay, that's what it's about. Same way we make the sound, it reflects something much more profound on an inner level. So at the end of the practice, when I would dissolve all of the effort and sit in the experience, I felt like there's a very important moment in these practices to realize the central origin of yantra, mantra, and mandala. So for us, it's yantra, mantra, and mandala. Right? Mandala then being the totality of the experience without any division between subtle and gross, high and low, bija, dhyana shloka, right? Yantra and inner experience, no division at all. Everything is nothing but the enlightened mandala. That's what we want to learn how to be in and walk in and recognize. So there's a relationship between the mantra, yantra, mandala, very clearly. Those of you who've seen Swami Niranjan's drawing for me, the map of the 12-stage view, you can see how he applied mantra, yantra, mandala to 4 stages, 4 stages, 4 stages. When he taught that, right, to me on the train. So we can see that relationship. It's very powerful. When you walk by and see the art, be wowed by the art and be grateful to the artist, but also remember it should trigger something inside that even can't be represented physically as well. Then when you have that and you look back at it, you're actually blessing the mandala, blessing the yantra, blessing the deity that's there as well. It becomes this reflexive awareness, the vimarsha shakti occurs, the reflexive awareness of essence itself, on itself. Yeah.
Is there a relation to yantra, mantra, mandala?
Check the sound because I keep hitting this thing and I want to make sure it's still on. You got sound showing up? Okay.
Correlation with yantra, mantra, and mandala to Shiva, Shakti, Nara, or anything like that? Because mandala to me seemed very, the 3 divisions that we always do, this seemed very like Nara, like no division, all of the body physical as well, like Nara. Is there,
I think you can do it. You can say that mantra is the individual, yantra is Shakti, and mandala is Shiva. If you wanted to say like, yeah, the Shiva consciousness is the mandala. It's the overarching, everything is all now one. There's no more distinctions. That's what Shiva is. Non-preferential, no distinctions. Everything is pure essence light, effulgent essence light, essence, nothing else exists. In divisible form, Then you get into Shakti, and you get, wow, it's that same essence light, now variegated. And that's why we love the Sri Yantra so much. You know the mandala yantra being painted on the outside of the yoga temple, right? With all the triangles. How many triangles? How many yoginis? How many yoginis in mythical lists all the time?
I'm totally brain farting.
There are 9 main triangles, and then there are many others.
64, right? 64 yoginis. So there's 9 big triangles, right? And there's a whole bunch more inside. So when you see that, that's when you get this sense of, wow, this is amazing. So on a personal level, the individual, on the Shakti level, that yantra represents totality. The Sri yantra that we're talking about with all these triangles is very, very sacred to the yogins because it really encapsulates the whole universe. So it starts to go beyond yantra into the level of mandala. That's the whole idea. And that's why the goddess who rules it is, her name is Shodashi or Tripura Sundari, the ruler of the 3 worlds. And there is, in this idea, there's only 3 worlds. So she's all of them, the gross, the subtle, and the in-between. And indeed, her mantra is divided up into 3 sections of 5, right? 15-syllable mantra that give access to each one of these levels as siddhi, as attainment. Right? And I've gone through this sadhana with my gurus. It's very powerful for us. So this is a very big thing in our tradition. So that could be seen as the energetic manifestation through the yantra, Shakti. And then the mantra gets down to the individual trying to climb back up. You know what I mean? You're doing the mantra, you can do the mantra. You can't do a yantra, you can do the mantra, you know. You can generate this Shakti of the mantra individually to ride back to source. So yes, Ajamala could be seen that way. But of course, sometimes along the practice you get the sense that, well, the mantra is everything, the yantra is everything, the mandala is everything. But looking at it sequentially, you could see it that way too. Any others? Especially at trying to understand the sutras would be useful, yeah.
Just going off of his question, the Mahamrityunjaya and Gayatri, are those in the dhyana category as well?
Yeah, the Mahamrityunjaya and Gayatri mantras are in the category of not so much dhyana shlokams where you're visualizing something. It's not quite that. They're mantras that are meant to give you a certain bhava, a certain experience spiritually. So dhyana shlokas are for puja to work with deities, where we invoke a deity, right? And then these other mantras are a little bit of a different category. Om Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyona Prachodayate. So that's Gayatri, as you know. And in the Gayatri is a goddess Gayatri, right? So it does describe how her effulgent light goes into the 3 worlds, the light of consciousness, and rectifies everything. So it's sort of like who she is. I visualize this, but it's sort of like what her action and power is. So it's getting closer to her energy body. And that's why bijas were added later. Om Bhurabhuvasvaha, or the Om Bhurabhuvasvaha, all the rest of the bijas that we know are added later, later in the tradition. Same thing with the, we need to check the deck on top of the house. Same thing with the Mahamrityunjaya, the great victory over death mantra. Om Trembakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Hurva Rukabhivabandhanam Mrityor Mukshiyamamritade. We added later, Hraung Jung Saha Om. Made it super powerful. So it already had enough power, but we made it super powerful with the bijas. So those 2 mantras are like in between what we would say like a dhyana shloka's power is and a bija mantra's power is. But then we added the bijas and made it super. So we use those both. One to purify the mind into a sense of enlightenment, of effulgent light, and one to purify the mind from all attachments into essence as pure open spaciousness. That's how they both work. The 1-2 punch of Tantra for foundation practice purification, right? Good. Make sense? Any more? Chittang mantraha. Right? So now the acharyas are getting into a place with their foundation practices where they're going to start moving into deeper deity yoga, which means mantra sadhana. Now you see something in the world where, like if you go to BSY yoga and you receive initiation, they give you mantra sadhana. Don't tell you what deity to visualize, don't tell you what chakra to put it in, not to do it in the context of a puja. But that's because of the diaspora that occurred in the Islam world that took over India, where all the yogins had to run to the mountains. Couldn't do pujas anymore, and everything became slowly separated from its root. And we always retained the power of the mantra. We knew that if we had the mantra, the individual Shakti at the very least, the Jivatma Shakti, right? That we could make that full again, and we would get back to our full enlightened state and understand yantra again and puja and so forth. So they still teach that way. But the original way, and the fuller way, which I think is better too, is that you receive mantra as an understanding of a deity yoga practice. You don't receive it as a completely ignorant being who just showed up for initiation and then try to use it to work your way back to enlightenment, because the only relationship you have to those sounds are blah, blah, blah. The way you talk all day and gossip and abuse each other, you know. So it's not the right energy. There should be purification first. Then you should be purified when you receive that mantra. It should come off your tongue in a purified way. You should understand it coming from your essence and riding it back to essence, back to your heart. That is the proper way, and then it'll have more results, you see. So that's really good. So many yoga traditions in the world, these are especially the traditions that teach a lot of yoga, that came from Tantra, will teach mantra. The guru will give mantra, and he dispense it without the rest of the contextualization, which acts as a container to hold it and give it fruit of stability. That's actually puja, deity visualization, and there's sort of like lifestyle things that go with it actually at that time. Sometimes dietary restrictions, sometimes things you wear, blah, 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 certain times you should practice.
I was curious, hang on, I need to get it back.
You get it back. So it's not that I'm saying that the Bihar School of Yoga does it wrong, it's just it's not a very full way to do it. And I haven't seen a lot of great results from the students who receive transmission that way of the mantras. Not that the gurus aren't giving live mantra when they give mantra diksha, initiation into mantra, they do. But the student's not prepared correctly. And if the student's not prepared correctly, you can't have the great result. You know, if you just sign your name on a list, you've never met the guru before, you just got interested in the system, you sign your name on a list, you buy a mala and a dhoti and you show up and they give you initiation, what kind of relationship could there be with you and the system, you and the guru at that point? So mantra would be ineffective. At that point, that's great to do that kind of initiation. Everybody has to enter somewhere, and we do the same, to enter somewhere, of course. I received all this from my gurus. The system I'm talking about right now that they do is the system I was in. But it could be done better. And that should be then the purification level, and then you move into the deeper sadhanas and deeper mantras, which of course they did with me, and I'm grateful for that. Moved into deeper and deeper mantras with them, deeper and deeper sadhanas, as I was prepared for that level of Shakti, that energy, you know.
So you mentioned something very briefly earlier about one mantra, having the one mantra that you master can lead to or gives a clue into or
Can awaken all the other ones.
Awaken all the other ones. Could you clarify that? I've tried using the same method while working with deities, especially on this book. Some of the deities, there were no extant images, nobody practiced the tradition. I didn't have anybody to get initiation into the mantra from. And so, not knowing this, I just used my own Ishta Devata's mantra as a sort of introduction to try and dial.
Well, you would want to get, I hear what you're saying, I think it's loud enough for the mic to not repeat it. You'd want to get initiation into that mantra, and then practice that mantra. And then get the fruit of that deity yoga, and then you would probably have a better feeling for what I might even see the deity.
Right.
You know, when I was practicing the Norwegian tradition of deity yoga, with Thor and Odin and all that stuff with Ivar, a very ancient tantric system of the Nordic people, I was shocked, because I came out of the meditation so many times with descriptions of deities that didn't match the books at all. And then when Ivar would tell me the family history on the deities, it matched their family histories. And I realized I had an entryway in now, and I was meeting the real actual forms, anthropomorphized forms of the deities, the real ones. And that made it feel so alive and so much more real than any cartoon characters I'd been reading about in mythology books before, right? But that came from doing the sadhana and getting the connection through the deity first. So what's actually key in your whole question is that we achieve the mantra siddhi of that. And that could take a long time, you know, as you know. So when you achieve the whole mantra siddhi of that deity, then, because the Shakti of non-dual, non-karmic essence is awake within you in that energy mantra, that mantra can pierce the other mantras and awaken them. Then you can pick up the other deity's mantra, whether you receive it by diksha or not, and it'll be awakened, and you can use it and get that deity's reality. But if we don't have the full deity yoga fruit yet, then what we do is we go and get the diksha of that mantra, of the one that we want to have realization of, and go for that Deity Yoga fruit. Yeah? And then we can see them, you know. Then you know what to draw, what to paint, yeah. I believe there are actual versions of the deities that aren't just attuned to your own personality, but that all the great yogins saw these actual visions of the deities, and maybe they averaged them into a painting or image, but that in that averaging, it still is the template and the entry point. I'm not saying that's what happened, maybe. I know that my experience of it showed them exactly as they were portrayed in the classics, and I was like, wow. But this really, for me, was powerful because I didn't know the classics. I didn't know them at first. I saw the deity or deities first, and then I was checking. And then I was, oh, wow. So it matches, and you think, well, this must be an extant reality that we're tapping into, right? Many times students call this archetypes, but this is not archetype. I think it goes beyond Jung's concept of archetype, quite far beyond that, actually. But so that's not quite correct. Yeah. Any more?